Hello my friends, and welcome to the channel for another Warhammer 40K Darktide video. In this one, I'm going to be doing something a little different, and instead of talking about a full character build, I want to talk about my new favorite tool for bringing the wrath of the Imperium down upon the heretic scourge that's infested the Hive City. The tool in question is the Indignatus Mark IV-E Crusher. It's a simple hunk of steel fashioned to the end of a wooden stick, but what it lacks in elegance, it more than makes up for with raw crushing force. Now I'll admit, I'm more of a heavy chainsword type of Zealot player. It takes a lot for me to put down the blade in exchange for a blunt weapon, but in this case I think it's well worth it. And by the time I had finished my first session with the Crusher, I was pretty sure I had just found my new favorite melee weapon in Darktide. With the recent patch 14, the Crusher received quite a few improvements that made it evolve from somewhat of a purely defensive crowd control type of weapon into a more aggressive and punishing piece of kit. Put into game terms, that starts with an overall attack speed increase, making this heavy two-handed mace surprisingly quick and nimble to swing. I was actually kind of caught off guard by how fast you can attack with it now, and that carries over to the heavy attacks as well, which can be charged quite quickly. I'm not going in depth on the Zealot build that I've been using with the Crusher in this video, but right here I'll put up a screenshot of the full talent tree, so if this video inspires you to try out the Crusher for yourself, you can just screenshot this and copy the talents that I'm using. In the patch notes, the devs specifically describe the new Crusher as a fast, crowd-controlling, headshot-focused weapon. And that brings us to the second big change in the patch 14 update, a retuned damage profile on the Crusher. In the patch notes, it says the damage profile has been tuned to be more efficient with a focus on headshotting enemies. From my experience running this for a few hours, I can confirm that's exactly how it feels. I don't think it really lost any of its already potent crowd controlling ability, since you can still knock down pretty much anything if you hit it enough. But now it's really noticeable when you hit big heavy attacks to the head or really any weak spot. And let me tell you, when you've got a big enemy knocked onto the ground and struggling to get back to their feet, those headshots come pretty easy. Another improvement to the Crusher comes in the form of a larger hitbox for the heavy attacks specifically. And this is a lot more forgiving and makes it much easier to land those heavy attacks when you charge them up. The patch notes say the hitbox for heavy attacks have been changed from 1.15 to 1.4, which is about a 20% increase in the hitbox size if my math is anywhere near correct. I won't claim to be an expert on the hitboxes in Darktide, but from a boots on the ground perspective, I did find it very easy and consistent to hit heavy attacks with the Crusher, even when I was backing off a bit from the enemies so they couldn't hit me with their melee attacks. Another pretty noteworthy change on the Crusher is that the follow-up attack after a push has been improved, turning it into a fast horizontal sweep with increased finesse damage. What this means is that one of your main crowd controlling attacks just has a flat boost to headshot and critical hit damage. This is low-key quite awesome, because now instead of the push attack just being something to create space and push enemies back, it also doubles as a pretty solid source of damage, and once you get accustomed to aiming the push attack for weak points, you might be surprised at how much damage you can pump out with just this attack, especially when you crit. The final tweaks in the patch notes say that they've added one more dodge to the Crusher, and reduced the explosion radius on the activated special attack. I think that's a fine compromise since the weapon already has insane crowd control, and with the boosted damage profile it doesn't need to rely that much on the special attack anymore. Now when it comes to blessings on the Crusher, I hadn't used it too much before the update, so I didn't have many of them unlocked to try out. But it basically has 4 blessings that increase melee impact, 1 for damage and 1 for taunting enemies. For my part, I've been running with Skull Crusher, which increases damage based on the enemy's stagger, and Hammer Blow, which stacks extra impact for even more crowd control potential. With these 2 blessings combined, it becomes progressively easier to stagger large enemies, and the more you build up stagger on your targets, the harder you'll hit them. So it kind of becomes a snowball effect where you end up just knocking everything down because you generate more impact, and then the harder you knock them down, the more damage you do to them. For the perks on a Crusher, I would say melee weak spot damage is a good option to pair with the new Crusher damage profile. Damage against armored enemies is also pretty nice so you can dispatch them faster. And of course, rolling the classic crit chance or crit damage can't really hurt either. Damage against maniacs also wouldn't be too bad since they can sometimes be difficult to knock down, so just getting rid of them faster is a bonus. I managed to roll a crusher with over 70% in every single stat, and I'm really looking forward to trying it out, but I've burned way too much plasteel trying out other builds, and I have some farming to do before I can upgrade that one all the way. Now before I call this one quits, I kinda wanted to pass on some advice about combos with the crusher, and how I've been using the moveset to switch between maximizing damage and maximizing crowd control. The moveset on the crusher is pretty simple. After all, it's just a big hunk of steel on a stick, but you can be pretty calculated about how you use your attacks in certain situations. For efficient single target damage, I've just been doing a simple double strike down combo by alternating one heavy attack and one light attack over and over and over again. The first heavy attack in the chain will charge up a big single target smash, and then the follow-up light attack does a second single target smash. This combo is great against elites and specials when you have them one-on-one. I use the special on the crusher with this combo quite often since you can activate it quite quickly right before the first heavy attack, blast them with the 2 hits, and then reactivate it before they get out of the stagger animation. This single target combo is also kind of perfect to use with the Zealot's dash ability, letting you charge the heavy outside of the enemy's attack range, then dash in and smash them for a guaranteed critical hit. And as you can probably see, even on Damnation difficulty, you can use this combo to bully some very big beefy enemies into submission quite quickly. Next, when you want to maximize crowd control or clear a massive horde without getting overrun, the Crusher also has a very simple 2-move combo for that. This time just alternating one light and then one heavy attack. The first light attack is a wide sweep that hits several targets, and the follow-up heavy attack is another wide sweep that will knock down most enemies you hit with it. If you just keep alternating light and heavy attacks, this combo keeps going, and you can quite literally just walk through hordes with this combo. You can do basically this same combo starting with the push attack instead of a light attack as well. The timing is a little trickier, but it lets you push back enemies for safety, then do a sweep attack with increased finesse damage, then follow up with the heavy for another big wide sweep. And that, I do believe, pretty much covers it for my thoughts on the Crusher as my new favorite Zealot weapon after the patch 14 update. I probably went into a little more detail here than necessary, but I was honestly quite smitten with this thing once I started using it. You can very easily control the flow of pretty much any melee fight. You can bully big armored enemies into the ground with it, you can sweep hordes aside like they don't exist, and it honestly has some pretty decent damage against monstrosities if you can go for the weak points as well. I'm interested to know what you think of the Crusher if you've been trying it out, and especially if you used it before the update. I'd like to know how it feels now compared to before the patch, since I never really used it before now. Thanks for checking out the video. I've got links to my Twitch stream and Discord server down below for anyone interested. And until next time, stay safe out there in the Hive City.